the beginning time.
Yeah, all right. 3, 2, 1.
And now we're happy to welcome on our first guest on the podcast. This is Un Cho, a former member of the Harvard golf team. How's it going, Un?
Hey, how you guys doing? I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Glad to have you on.
Yeah. So I'd love to start off by having you just talk about how you grew up with golf. Sort of, how did you get into the game? How old were you when you started playing?
Yeah, sure. So I moved to Canada when I was 4 years old, and luckily golf in Canada is very affordable, and there's a lot of great golf courses that you can play. And my biggest influence when I was young, probably around 8, 9 years old, my cousin, who's actually 6 years older to me, he's currently playing professional golf, and he was going through the junior circuit at the time. So my mother introduced me to him, and then he took me around the golf links. It was a public golf course named Chedoke Golf Course in Hamilton. And that's where my passion and love for the game really flourished. Being with him, his friends, wanted to beat the older guys. I just wanted to hit the ball far as a young age.
That's cool. Did you, so you started playing, you'd say, around when you were 4?
No. So I played in and out, but I think I seriously started when I was around 8, 9.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that's when all my summers were spent at the course.
Cool.
Right.
So how much do you think you practiced during those summers? Were you one of the guys that was just grinding out there all day, every day?
So my early years wasn't much practicing. It was just always on the course, late evenings, trying to get a golf hole that I could just mess around with my cousin, hitting those 180-yard shots, trying to get out of tough spots. So it wasn't much so practicing, but just more so getting the love and trying to enjoy the game. And then later in the earlier junior circuits, when I was around 12, 13, I started learning more of the fundamentals and grinding it out on the practice range and whatnot.
Do you think that you benefited more as a player from those times when it was just having fun playing on the course, or do you think that the hours on the course, the grind, really helped you more? Because I know some players kind of differs what makes them tick more, just kind of the love for the game and figuring it out themselves on the course versus just those straight hours practicing.
So I actually thought about this a lot, especially a young talent. What makes a young talent great? Is it pure passion for the game, or is it fundamentals, putting in the hours at a very young age? And what it really comes down to is, I think, it's your unique personality. So if you look at a guy like Bubba Watson, right? He's notorious for not practicing, but he's all about the creative shots and wanting to play on the course. But me personally, I think it was important for me to grind it out on the range, because maybe my principles and my dedication wasn't as strong as some other players.
Right.
So learning the proper grip, the takeaway tempo and everything like that really helped me enjoy the game more, because I'm a personality where if I don't do it right and if I don't excel in it, I'm not going to enjoy it and I'm going to let it go pretty quick. But because I had an overlook of my cousin and coaches kind of looking after me and fostering my game, I think that's where I really flourished and started to enjoy it, because I got good at it at a young age.
That's cool. So to sort of build off of that, what was your level of instruction like? Did you have lessons? How often would you take them? I'm assuming you had a coach for high school. What was your relationship like with him or her? Was it so maybe you could talk a bit about instruction, because I know that's a big thing that people focus on.
For sure. So I was lucky enough when I was young to meet my first coach named Jim Badeau. And he worked at the public course that I was the first member at. And he was really good with children, because he understood that it was all about fun at a young age. So I actually looked forward to the lessons, because I got to drive the cart at the end. And that was kind of a big excitement for me.
Yeah,
and he always told me ooh, if you can focus in, if we can do these putting routines, or chip it this close, then you can drive the cart after. And having these clear-cut goals for me really helped me focus and dial in, because at a young age, kids aren't that competitive at 8, 9. You just want to have fun, sort of. So that helped me a lot. Yeah.
That's funny that you mentioned the cart, because I remember when I just first started going to the range with my dad, it was such a big thing. There was this range out in Needham, which is by my town, and you would have to drive up to it, and I would be so happy to take the cart and drive up to the top. I would look forward to it every time. So that's funny that you mentioned that, because I remember a similar thing happening to me.
Yeah, and for a young child, that cart is like equivalent to driving like a real sized full automobile. And
Right.
so like getting that responsibility from adult, like getting that nod, like that was a big kind of confidence boost, even though I kind of got out of hand with the cart at times. Yeah, those are fun memories.
I actually have a pretty funny story about that. When I was like 12, I played 9 with this guy who ended up getting pretty drunk. And after the 9th hole, he said, "I'm done. Like I hate this game. Blah blah blah. Do you want to take my cart?" And
Yeah.
I think I was 11 or 12, maybe. I'd driven golf carts around before, but never been like in control of one by myself. But I'm 12 here, so I say, yeah, sure, of course, right? And so me and Jonathan grew up playing together, Putterham.
Mhm.
It's kind of like a not so great municipal. And hello?
Yeah.
What's up?
All right, wait, sorry, the audio got super weird. It
No
like
worries.
buzzed.
Oh yeah,
I'll cut that part. But anyways, so this was at the golf course that me and Jonathan grew up playing. This like shitty municipal, and so I'm taking the cart, driving it around, do okay for my first 2 holes, and then I get to the 12th hole, which is this short par 3.
super
But
downhill.
the cart path is super downhill, and you have to
Turns.
drive around a corner. And Jonathan knows.
Yep.
And so I turn the cart, and I just way overshot the turn, drive it into a ditch, and now I'm in
Oh
this
my
ditch with this cart.
Austin, I've never heard this story.
Yeah, I don't think I've told anyone. It's sort of embarrassing. So I'm stuck in this ditch with this cart, trying to like push it out. Literally, I'm like trying to reverse, trying to push it. It's not doing anything.
Oh my
And
god.
eventually, I just take my clubs off the cart and I just walk away.
No
And
way.
this is like twilight. It's dark. There's no one there. So I just left. I left, walked away, walked down like the 17th, played 17 and 18, walked in, and then I told someone that worked for maintenance there that like I had driven the cart into the ditch and basically just left.
You
Which is
said
like-
you told him
Jesus
that? You
Christ.
didn't even lie? I would have said like,
No.
why didn't you just say like, I saw this cart on the side of the, like you could have just said like, wow, hey, I was
I was
playing
like 12. I had no idea. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I figured he'd just go in
Oh
there
my
and
God, that's absurd.
next time I
Austin.
went, I got a good talking to from the pro.
Was it Tom?
No, it was Brian. Brian was he was
Tom
nice.
was not allowed you to play at the course anymore.
Tom would have been mad for sure, but I think that Brian handled it. He was very nice to me, but he said no, we're driving the golf carts around, and I did not.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so funny little golf course story. So Un, back to you. So once you got into high school, I imagine you started to play reasonably competitively.
Mhm.
Can you talk a bit about balancing school and golf? Because I know that that's probably been a big thing for you. I know in high school, you did very well academically. Obviously, you ended up at Harvard, where they have some pretty rigorous academics, and I imagine through your golf career, you've had to balance that out. And so, how hard has it been to sort of balance those two things? I imagine that you love golf way more. So, is it hard to keep up academically, or how did you manage to do that?
Yeah, so in high school, it was a lot more manageable because I actually grew up in Toronto, Canada. So for those that don't know, Toronto has some of the worst weathers, winter weather especially, that Americans are used to. If you think like Buffalo is bad, you can think of it as like even worse than Buffalo. So we get a ton of snow, a lot of winter storms. So during the fall, winter, and early spring, golf is an activity that you can do outdoors. So like a lot of it is indoor practicing, and a lot of the junior golfers know the grind of indoor practicing, and that can be very, very dull. So at most you can probably practice at like 4 hours, and that's very intense. Even that amount is very intense. So during the winters, schooling was very manageable. I didn't really think about golf too much until I was like very serious around 16, 17, 18.
Okay.
So that part, yeah, was very manageable. And during the summers, because we had long summer vacations, golf academics was a non-factor, and I could travel around Canada and some bigger tournaments in the US without worrying about school. But when I came to Harvard, that thing just completely changed. And the commitment, the time commitment, especially, even though they warned me about it, I just wasn't prepared for it. And my freshman year, I still remember vividly, was one of the worst roller coaster rides I'd ever experienced in terms of time management. Yeah, so we had morning practices, and during the fall, it was the afternoon practices. And it's contrary to what people believe, morning practices was a lot more manageable, even though we had to show up to the practice area at like 5:30 a.m. 5 days a week.
That's interesting.
And, yeah, because we would go to the course, and then we would have our qualifiers, we would have our practice sessions, and we would be back around 11:30, 12 noon, and we would have our lunch and then attend our afternoon classes. But when we had afternoon practices, that was just another monster, because we wouldn't be able to have afternoon classes. We would have to finish around 1 or 2 p.m. and then we would go straight to the course. And that means if the traffic's bad, we would arrive around 2:45, 3, and then we would try to get an 18-hole qualifier in. And if you don't know, Harvard Golf played at Brookline, the country club now it's called.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and that is just a monster of a course. It's par 70, sometimes plays par 69.
Yep.
Well over 7,000 yards, tiny post stamp greens. So if you're not on your game, if your ball striking is not on, you're gonna have a long day, which a lot of us did.
If you're not familiar with this course, this course hosted the Ryder Cup in 1999, and the U.S. Open is going to be there in 2021. This course is hard, and it is legit.
Yeah, Matt Fitzpatrick won the USM there a couple of years ago.
Yep.
For sure. And a lot of people remember probably this scene, but the Ryder Cup when Justin Leonard made that putt on 17. Yeah. That was a huge iconic scene. And when you're there, you don't actually understand the elevation from back to front, how severe that is. So that putt was even more impressive when I got to see that. Yeah, but going back to what I was saying, so we would finish our qualifiers around 7, maybe. If it got bad, probably around 8 p.m. And we would drive back and we would get dinner, and all the dining halls would be closed by then. So we would get per diem somewhere else. And then by the time you eat dinner and you unwind just a tiny bit, if you hang out with your friends for like 30 minutes, an hour, you find yourself at like 10, 11 p.m.
Yeah. And
now you have to go back to your books. And to be honest, I just didn't know how to do that. Like, I didn't come from a very academic, rigorous high school. A lot of my peers did. They went to a lot of the private schools here in America, and they got training and accustomed to that. But yeah, so freshman year was a huge learning experience. And then sophomore and then junior year, obviously, it just became a lot more manageable.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting that you think about time management. Like going to college, you have to get better at time management anyways, but having to balance all those practices, I just couldn't even really imagine that. I just imagine it'd be super tough for me to even begin to do that with, not even being able to start work till 11 and having all that prior commitments. So it's pretty impressive that you were able to end up handling that.
Mm-hmm. And it's really unlike the other sports, and sports at Harvard in general, the student body, they're not very in tune with it, as opposed to like some of the big state schools. So like, even if you do well, you don't get like, not that like this is what we're after, but notoriety or like any kind of recognition, and especially golf. Like even when we win the tournaments, like no one back at campus would know of it. Yeah. So it's a very thankless sport, and having a time commitment of 30 hours a week, you just really got to love the sport, because your social life, your academic, it's all going to suffer a bit at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a brutal commitment to have to keep on grinding at. It just feels like you really have to love it. Mm-hmm. I think that it would be interesting for you to talk a little about what kind of like strength and conditioning you did while you were on the team. I think that a lot of people are looking for ways to hit the ball a little bit further. And for those who don't know, you're not a big kid. I don't know. You probably weigh less than 160 pounds, I guess, right? Probably like 5'10", 150 maybe. And you generate a ton of power. I mean, we've played together, and you're hitting drives that are pushing 300 pretty easily. Where do you think that power is generated from? Do you think that working out for golf is effective? What did you find was the best way to do it?
Yeah, so I was very active as a youngster growing up.
Yeah, and I saw that you played basketball. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of basketball, I was third string point guard.
Oh,
So
nice.
if any of you knows basketball, I'm the backup for the backup. So that
That's
pretty
the best
much
position.
meant, yeah, that pretty much meant I was a designated bench warmer. But you still have to burn a few calories to keep the bench warm. So that's what I could be prideful for. But yeah, it was fun being the basketball team. But outside of that, I don't know where this value was instilled in me, but like stretching and yoga was a big part of my life growing up in high school, especially. Like even though I went to the gym and like I worked out with kind of like the jocks and like the big muscle bros, like I always made sure to get in my stretches and yoga at the end of the day. And I'm very, very flexible. I was definitely the most flexible guy on our team and one of the more flexible guys that I know around. So I'm able to generate like this, they call it the X factor, where you just, yeah. So when it comes down to it, it's not like how much bench press you can put up or how much you can curl. It's like these plyometrics, these fast twitch muscles that you have to train. And the unfortunate thing is that why it's so hard for the older adults to gain yards is that plyometrics, although you can work at it and you can definitely increase your fast twitch muscles, most of that, it can only be trained when you're young, like so 30 and under.
Yeah.
Because the fast twitch muscles, they can't be trained later on. They just won't listen pretty much. But yeah, so for any of those out there that try to like increase the yards out there, it's not about these slow lifts. It's about explosive movements and a lot of rotational exercises. There's a ton out there. If you just search like golf, plyometrics, explosive exercises, you can get a ton of workouts. But yeah, not being a big guy, that's been a big help for me at least. And it's kind of like aggravated some of my playing opponents who are like probably have like 5 inches on me and like I'm hitting it past them like 10, 15 yards. So that was kind of fun.
That is really interesting because I don't think that gets pointed to in almost any other sport, right? Like every other sport I can think about is just like muscle mass, get as big as you can, get as strong as you can. But it's interesting to hear sort of a different perspective for this sport. Like it's interesting to see what translates into distance, and I think it's a little bit counterintuitive. So it's definitely interesting to hear you talk about that.
Yeah,
sure.
A lot of people think that the harder they swing, right, that's the better that they'll hit it, the faster they'll hit it. But I don't think that's necessarily true. And I think you saying about the X factor and the fast twitch muscles, that's a lot of important advice for people to hear on what's actually important to train rather than just, swing speed, swing as hard as they can. Because people get obsessed with that, I think, and incorrectly so.
I totally agree. And especially if you're going out with your buddies on the weekends, like hitting the long ball, it's just a fun thing to do. It might not necessarily correlate to lower scores, but like, you're the big man of the group. And for guys, that carries a lot of weight.
I agree.
Yeah, that's definitely fun. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to let you brag about yourself a little bit, Un. What's the best round of golf that you've ever played? And what do you think that your best trait as a golfer is?
So throughout my career, when I look back at some of the scores that I shot on some of the courses that I played, it wasn't necessarily like this uncanny ability to like go low, but my trait was definitely being able to put up good scores on very, very tough courses. So if you guys know, the US Open is set up as probably the toughest challenge in golf. Like the roughs, like they have to have spotters at the rough area because even like 2 inches into the rough, the ball will disappear. They put the greens lightning fast. They just dry out the course and they make it as tight as possible. And they dry out the greens so that it's rock solid and the stimp meter probably goes up to like 14 when it gets really bad. So what caught the attention of Harvard Golf and how I was able to get recruited is that the US Open qualifiers, I performed very well at a young age. So I first got through the sectionals, the locals. So there's 2 stages to get into the US Open. It's the first locals. And then once you get through that, there are sectional qualifiers across the United States. But I got through the locals 3 years in a row. And it was just being able to put up like scores, nothing too crazy, like 1 under, 2 under even at courses that was like 7,400 yards, tight, just tough conditions.
Right.
And these courses, they just really beat you down. But I think perseverance really helped me, knowing that like, oh, this is not just tough for me. This has to be tough for everyone else. So even like if you stumble a bit and you make a bogey or, God forsake, like a double early on, like you just keep at it, because this isn't like a qualifier for like I don't know, like a web.com tour where guys are going into the low 60s. So
Right.
yeah, tough courses and being able to put up solid scores has been definitely a positive trait of mine.
Cool, man. That's an interesting one. I thought you were gonna say like my putting is great, but it's just interesting to hear someone say
Yeah.
like a mental trait, right? I don't think that
Mhm.
there are too many guys on tour that would like. You look at DJ, he hits it really, really, really far, right?
For
So that's definitely interesting. I think we'll finish up with you, Un, by asking you a question from a fan. We had some Q&A stuff. A bunch of people wrote in, and I picked my favorite question. So this is from Jerry Robinson at JaredDog1966 on Twitter. He says, ask the Harvard guy if he needed a rangefinder with slope adjustment or he did the calcs in his big brain. Hashtag Harvard. Thought that was funny.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, anytime that I'm going for, so usually the rangefinder and the slope measure, it becomes most useful on the approach shot on the par 5 or the second shot or par 4. And for me, I always make sure to locate where the North Star is, because that's the source of my energy. So for Jerry out there, next time you're out there, just look to the sky and locate where the North Star is, because the ball tends to slope towards there. That's all I have to say about that.
Great insight. I didn't know that, but I'll have to incorporate that one into my game.
For sure.
Cool.
No
wait.
secret from the inside.
All right, J-Bell. Sorry. Do you want to do the tip segment with Un? Like,
Yeah. So Un,
you want to just ask him? Yeah, you can.
I'll do it. We can cut that part.
Yeah.
So Un, one of our segments at the end of the podcast that we were doing is we give a tip to our listeners, a tip that we think is important and that many people might not know. And obviously, as you played D1 college golf and you're a very, very talented golfer, we think you might have good input on this. So if you had to give one tip to the weekend warrior, the recreational golfer, important tip, or one of them, because there's a lot of them, that weekend warrior.
So I actually have one tip that I think is just pivotal, and it's just like so essential, and it's applicable to every golfer. So I think this next tip that I'm going to say, it's, for me at least, is the one that has helped my game the most. And because everyone's game, long game, short game, their swings, everyone's so different. So I'm not necessarily going to talk about like a specific kind of technique, but more so kind of like the psychological approach. And so we all know that in order to play well, whether you're trying to break 90 for the first time, 80, 70 on the PGA Tour, putts within 15 feet, the ones that you can make, it is so important to give it a good roll and give it a chance at it, right? And I don't really care what your stroke is, whether you have a fast tempo, slow, if you like to put the ball forward or you keep your head down. All I have to say that is, like, before you make the putt and you're reading the line, you have to visualize that ball going in. So that means, like, people always say, oh, I'm going to put the ball in, I'm going to make this putt. But you have to be way more specific than that. If you look at a hole cup, you have to know exactly, oh, I'm going to roll it in at 6:30 with a quick pace, or I'm going to put a dead center at 6 o'clock. So know what part of the hole you want to put it in, the pace you see it going in, and then visualize that right before you make that putt. Visualize the line that it follows, the pace that it's going to go, and even the sound of it as it goes in, and then make the putt. And that might sound kind of wacky. Maybe you wanted something a little more technique oriented, but I can't emphasize this enough. Visualizing, especially putts within 15 feet, it's going to help so much, and it's going to build your confidence when you step out to that putt.
All right. I think that's a really good putt. I've really tried to work on visualizing more. I think it also increases your mental strength, like how strong you are mentally, how your ability to overcome bad shots. If you can visualize good shots. So I think that's a really good tip, and thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, Noon. We appreciate it. You're our inaugural guest to this podcast. So yeah, hopefully you'll come on again soon. It's been awesome to talk to you.
Hey, thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Austin. That was
Yeah, no
really
problem.
fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem, man. See ya.
All right, have a good night. Toodaloo.
All right,
Yeah, that went well.
Vic. Yeah, that one definitely went well. I think that was good, right?
I think that went pretty well.
There's a lot of good content in there.
Yeah,
A lot of
we
what you
definitely
said
did
is
pretty well.
super interesting.
Yeah. I think. Are you down to do I'm trying to think of my schedule tomorrow. I have class at 10 and 11, and then I could just grab lunch and then just come to this. I just found a nice little spot in my dorm, which would be good to pod, and then we could like talk it over more tonight because I have to finish a comp sci lab, and then I have to set up this sports analytics project too. So I think it'd be less rushed if we did it. Could you do it during your lunch tomorrow?
Yeah, like
I get out of I have class at 10 and 11:50. At 11, but I get out at 11:50.
Yeah, I can do it tomorrow.
Okay. But I thought that went really well for the interview. I really did.
You want to just toss me the audio before you do shit, and then I'm gonna.
Yeah, it'll just be posted to YouTube. But yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I'll send you the YouTube link. Yeah, for sure. Those questions were good. I think it went pretty well. I think
I would listen to a lot of that. Was interesting. I would definitely listen to that.
Yeah. I think it'd be interesting. Yeah.
All right. Cool. Word.
All right. Cool.
Good
Yeah.
shit.
Noon. I'll see you at noon tomorrow.
I have a bunch of notes for the stuff tomorrow too. So
great. That's what we can just send them to me, and then we can like I said, talk over tomorrow when I have more time.
All right. Word. Cool.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, J-Bell.
Yeah. Bye.
See you.